My name is Kellia Swift, 29 years old. My boyfriend Jason is 27, and we've been together a little over 2 years, living together for 8 months. On paper, everything looks fine. Same city, similar schedules, no kids, no shared debt. We're the kind of couple people assume is stable just because we don't post dramatic things online. But lately, I've felt like I've been auditioning for a role I already had. Jason has this way of talking to me that's half joke, half jab. He'll comment on how I dress, like it's constructive criticism. He'll laugh about how I still haven't leveled up faster at work. If I tell him something bothers me, he says I'm being sensitive. If I go quiet, he says I'm sulking. So I learned to smile, to keep things light, to make it easy for him to be with me. Last Friday, he wanted to meet his friends after work. Group dinner, trendy place downtown, loud enough that no one really listens anyway. I almost bailed because I was exhausted, but he rolled his eyes and said, "Don't be boring." So I went. His friends were already there, wine glasses half empty, that sharp performative laughter bouncing around the table. I sat down, said hi, tried to keep up. They started teasing Jason about how long we'd been together. Someone asked if we were serious. Before I could answer, Jason laughed and waved his hand. "Relax. If this doesn't work out, I'll just replace her." There was a beat of silence. Then everyone laughed. I smiled. I even chuckled a little. That's what I always do. But something inside my chest went very, very quiet. I stayed quiet after that. Not in a dramatic way. I just checked out. Jason didn't notice. Or maybe he did and didn't care. His friend Mark raised his glass and said something like, "I mean, you always upgrade." More laughter. Jason grinned, like he'd won something. I took a sip of my drink and tasted absolutely nothing. It was strange how fast the moment passed for everyone else. New topic, new joke, another round of laughter, like I hadn't just been reduced to a placeholder with a pulse. I told myself it was just his humor. That's what he always says. You know how we joke, except the jokes always land on me. Dinner dragged. Jason barely spoke to me after that, unless it was to correct something I said or interrupt me mid-sentence. At one point, I mentioned a project I'd been leading at work, and he cut in with, "She's been doing the same thing forever," like he was apologizing to the table for me. When the server brought the bill, Jason didn't even look at it. He slid it toward me automatically. Muscle memory. I paid. No argument, no sigh. Just handled it like I always do. As I stood to head to the restroom, I caught a fragment of conversation behind me. Jason leaned toward his friends and said, not quietly, "She's lucky I put up with her. Most guys wouldn't." More laughter. I locked myself in the bathroom stall and stared at the door. I wasn't angry. That was the part that scared me. I felt detached, like I'd stepped half a foot to the side of my own life. When I came back, Jason asked, "You good?" But he was already scrolling on his phone. "Yeah," I said, "I'm good." And for the first time, I realized that was a lie I'd been telling for a long time. We left about 20 minutes later. He hugged his friends, promised drinks next weekend, didn't notice I was already halfway to the door. Outside, the night air felt colder than it should have. He walked a step ahead of me, boots clicking on the pavement, texting. "You were kind of quiet," he said, not looking up, not concerned, just observational. "Long week," I replied. He sighed. "You always say that." In the car, silence stretched between us. At a red light, he glanced over and smirked. "Don't tell me you're still stuck on the joke." "What joke?" I asked evenly. He laughed. "See, you get weird and dramatic. It's not that deep." I nodded and looked back at the road. At the apartment, he kicked off his shoes and headed toward the bedroom. "I'm taking a shower. Don't start a mood." That line stuck with me. Don't start a mood. Like my emotions were an inconvenience he didn't feel like dealing with. I sat alone on the couch, TV off, listening to the water run. I tried to pinpoint when things shifted. When I started shrinking myself to fit around his edges. When I stopped correcting him and started editing myself instead. He came out wrapped in a towel, hair damp, completely relaxed. "By the way," he said casually, "next weekend my friends want to go out again. Try to be more fun." That was it. Not anger, not sadness. Just a clean, quiet realization. If this is how he talks about me in public and this is how he talks to me in private, then this isn't love, it's tolerance. Conditional, temporary. I smiled and said, "Sure." Then I stood up, walked into the spare room, and started making a list in my head. I didn't sleep much that night. Jason passed out fast, sprawled across the bed like nothing had happened, like the word replaceable hadn't echoed across a restaurant table and settled into my bones. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying small moments from the last 2 years. The way he corrected my stories mid-sentence. The way our weekend plans always quietly shifted into whatever he preferred. The way disagreements ended with me apologizing just to keep the peace. Around 3 a.m, I got up and walked into the kitchen. I opened my laptop, not to be dramatic, just practical. I checked our lease first. Both names were on it, but the renewal wasn't for another 4 months. Then I checked the utilities. Internet in my name, electric in my name, streaming subscriptions in my name. I'd handled all of it because he hated calling companies. I didn't feel sneaky. I felt calm, focused, like I was reviewing a contract that no longer made sense. The next morning, he woke up irritated, like he always does on Saturdays when there's nothing exciting planned for him. He squinted at me over his coffee. "Why are you being weird?" "I'm not," I said. He rolled his eyes. "You're doing that quiet thing again. If you're mad, just say it." Mad wasn't the word. Mad implied heat. This was colder than that. "I'm going to run some errands," I said. "Cool. Pick up oat milk, and don't forget I have brunch at noon. You're driving." You're driving. Like it was automatic. Like I was an extension of his plans, not a person with my own. At brunch, I watched him like I was seeing him for the first time. The exaggerated stories. The subtle put-downs disguised as humor. At one point he said, "Kelly would never survive dating in this city without me." Everyone laughed. I smiled. Inside, I crossed something off my mental list. On the way home, he scrolled through his phone. "I might be late tonight. Guys' night." "Okay," I said. He glanced at me suspiciously. "That's it. No attitude." "Nope," he smirked. "See, much better." That night, after he left, I made a call. Then another. Then another. By the time he came home slightly drunk and louder than necessary, he had no idea something fundamental had already changed. He didn't notice the envelope on the kitchen counter. It wasn't dramatic. No note, no ultimatum, just paperwork. He stumbled past it and collapsed into bed without asking how my night was. The next morning he found it. "What's this?" he asked, holding it like it was something mildly annoying but harmless. "Open it," I said, already pouring coffee. He flipped through the pages slowly. His expression shifted from bored to confused to irritated. "Why are there locksmith receipts in here?" "Because I scheduled one." He stared at me. "Why?" "That's part of the list." "What list?" I finally looked at him, really looked. The defensive posture, the assumption that I was inconveniencing him. "The list of things I handle," I said calmly, "and the list of things I don't anymore." He scoffed. "You're seriously doing this because of some dumb joke." "It wasn't a joke," I said. "It was a statement." He laughed sharply. "Oh my God, Kelly, everyone laughed. That's how you know it was a joke." "No," I said quietly. "That's how I knew it wasn't." He shook his head like I was exhausting. "You're replaceable, Kelly. I was kidding. But you know that's true, right? No one's irreplaceable." There it was again. Same words, same tone. And something inside me settled completely. "I agree," I said. He blinked. "What?" "I am replaceable." I took a slow breath. "So I replace myself." His face went blank. "What does that even mean?" "It means I'm done auditioning," I said. "And I'm done paying to be disrespected." He laughed, but it sounded thinner now. "You're not serious." I stood up and grabbed my keys. "The locksmith comes at 3. "Kelly," he snapped, his voice suddenly sharp. "Don't be stupid. This is my apartment too." I paused with my hand on the door handle. Not for much longer. He followed me into the hallway, voice rising. "You're bluffing." I turned back, steady. "No, I'm leaving. You said I was replaceable." He opened his mouth to argue. I didn't give him the chance. So I made space. I walked out. The door closed softly behind me. And for the first time in 2 years, I felt light. I didn't drive far, just far enough that the buildings thinned out and the noise in my chest started to settle. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot and sat there with my hands resting on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead like it might suddenly explain how something that looked stable on paper could feel so hollow in real life. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Jason. Then again. Then again. "Are you serious right now? You're being dramatic. Come back so we can talk like adults. You're embarrassing me." That last one made me exhale slowly through my nose. Even now it was about him. His image, his comfort, his control. I muted the thread. Then I drove to my brother's place. He didn't ask questions when he opened the door. He just looked at my face, nodded once, and said, "Couch is yours." That was it. No judgment, no lecture, just space. I slept 12 straight hours. When I woke up, there were missed calls from unknown numbers, probably his friends. Damage control. I ignored them. I made coffee. I did laundry. I went for a long walk. Nothing urgent. Nothing reactive. The stillness felt strange but steady. At 2:47 p.m., my phone lit up again. I'm home. The locksmith thing better be a joke. At 3:06, I got a confirmation email. At 3:18, my phone rang again. At 3:41, the messages shifted tone. Kelly, please, we can talk. I didn't mean it like that. By 4:02, the tone changed again. You can't lock me out of my own place. This is illegal. I swear if you don't come back. At 4:15, my brother glanced over from the kitchen. You okay? Yeah, I said, and this time it wasn't forced. At 4:23, there was one final message. I was joking. Everyone jokes. You're really throwing everything away over this. I stared at that one for a long time, then I typed back slowly, carefully. Number, I'm finally keeping myself. I put my phone face down and didn't check it again. The next morning I went back to the apartment. Not inside right away. Just stood in the hallway outside the door for a moment. The air smelled like fresh paint from another unit and someone's burnt toast down the corridor. Normal life. I had texted him that I'd be coming by with my brother to collect the rest of my things. He replied immediately, You don't need backup. I'm not a psycho. I didn't respond. When the door opened, he froze for half a second when he saw my brother standing behind me. His eyes flicked down to the new lock. Shiny. Final. You really did it, he said quietly. Yeah, I said. His tone shifted, softer now. You humiliated me. The irony almost made me smile. I didn't humiliate you, I said calmly. You did that yourself, repeatedly. I just stopped covering for it. He crossed his arms. So what? You're some kind of victim now? No, I replied, stepping past him into the living room. I'm just done. The apartment already felt different. Not like mine anymore. More like a place I'd outgrown. I grabbed my laptop, a box of books, a couple of bags of clothes. He hovered nearby, alternating between silence and sharp remarks. You know, he said, leaning against the counter, most guys would kill to be with me. I paused, turned to face him fully. Then you won't have any trouble replacing me. For the first time, he didn't have a comeback. That silence said more than any argument could have. As I reached the door with my last bag, he tried one more angle. You're overreacting. Normal couples tease each other. You blew this up. No, I said evenly. You just underestimated me. We walked out without slamming the door, without theatrics. The hallway felt brighter somehow. The fallout didn't hit all at once. It came in waves. 2 days later, he emailed me. Not texted. Emailed. Long subject line. Longer message. It started calm, almost professional. He said he'd been reflecting. Said he wanted to own his part. Said he never meant to hurt me. Halfway through, the tone shifted. He said I'd blindsided him, that I'd acted emotionally unstable, that normal couples joke, that I'd overreacted in a way that scared him. He ended it by saying he hoped I'd get help before my next relationship. I closed the email without replying. What surprised me was how quiet everything else felt. No knot in my stomach, no urge to argue, just space. I realized how much energy I'd spent managing his moods, anticipating his reactions, softening myself so he wouldn't snap. Without that constant tension, my days stretched out in a way I wasn't used to. A week later, I ran into one of his friends at the gym. She looked awkward, like she didn't know which version of me she was supposed to react to. So, what happened? She asked. He said I was replaceable, I replied calmly, in front of all of you. Her face flushed. I thought you were joking. So did he, I said. That conversation stayed with me, not because it validated me, because it confirmed something important. People laugh along with cruelty all the time. Silence makes it look harmless. A few days after that, he texted late at night. I miss you. It feels empty here. I stared at it. Then I typed the truth. It felt empty when I was there too. No reply. I blocked his number the next morning. Not out of anger, out of clarity. The hardest part wasn't leaving. It was accepting how long I stayed after I knew I didn't matter the way I should have. A month passed quietly. Not the dramatic kind of quiet that feels like punishment, just steady silence. I moved into a smaller place closer to work. Nothing flashy. Clean walls, decent light, no shared history in the corners. The first night there, I sat on the floor eating takeout, straight from the container, back against the wall, and it hit me how peaceful silence could be when it wasn't loaded with judgment. No one correcting how I held my fork. No one sighing because I wasn't fun enough. No one joking about replacing me. Sometimes I'd catch myself reaching for my phone to tell Jason something random. A weird thing I saw on the street. A small win at work. Muscle memory. Each time the impulse faded faster. About 6 weeks later, I ran into him by accident. Same grocery store parking lot where I'd once sat staring at my steering wheel. I was loading bags into my trunk when I heard my name. Kelly! I turned. There he was, hairstyled, outfit sharp, smile rehearsed. Wow, he said, looking me up and down. You look good. Thanks, I replied evenly. There was a pause. He shifted his weight. I heard you moved. Yeah. Another pause. He inhaled like he was preparing something. I'm seeing someone. I didn't react fast enough, and he noticed. His eyes flickered with something that looked like satisfaction. Yeah, he added casually. He's really confident, knows his worth. I smiled, genuinely. That's good. He frowned slightly. That's it? What were you expecting? He hesitated. For a second, I saw something crack under the performance. You know, I didn't think you'd actually leave. And there it was, the real sentence. The one underneath everything else. I believed you, I said calmly. He blinked. What? When you said I was replaceable, I clarified, I believed you. And I realized I didn't want to stay somewhere I was optional. His jaw tightened. You're twisting that. No, I said gently. You meant it. We stood there in the open air between parked cars and grocery carts. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel defensive. I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. You made it such a big deal, he muttered. It was a joke. It wasn't, I replied. It was a belief. He searched my face for something. Regret, jealousy, softness. When he didn't find it, his posture shifted again. Less confident, less certain. I didn't think you'd actually leave, he repeated, quieter now. I know, I said. There was nothing left to add after that. I closed my trunk and got into my car. He stood there watching me, waiting for something dramatic. There wasn't any. I drove away with my hands steady on the wheel and my heart calm in my chest. That night, lying in bed in my new apartment, I replayed that sentence. I didn't think you'd actually leave. He wasn't wrong. For a long time, I wouldn't have. I would have laughed along, paid the bill, smiled through the jab, adjusted myself to keep the peace. But something shifted that night at dinner when the laughter felt louder than my dignity. Walking away wasn't revenge. It wasn't about proving a point. It was the first honest thing I'd done for myself in that relationship. People have asked if I miss him. The truth is, I miss the version of me I thought I was when I believed endurance was love, when I believed being chosen meant tolerating disrespect. That version of me is gone now. I don't hate him. I don't wish him anything bad. I hope he finds someone who matches what he wants. I just know now that what he wanted was someone who wouldn't leave, no matter how small he made her feel. And that was never going to be me again. He laughed. His friends laughed. I stood up, paid my bill, and walked away. When he got home, the locks had been changed. Not to punish him. To remind myself that I am not replaceable, and I don't need to prove my worth to someone who never bothered to see it.